Well, the Liberty Bell has quite an interesting story.
It does indeed.
Why don't you tell us about it?
Well, obviously every city needs to have a bell because it symbolizes the center of the city. A major message tells the time. You get breaking news, especially in a time when there's no television or, let's say, any other major communication. And so Philadelphia had a bell, but over its time since it was established until about 1750, the bell had served, but the city was getting so big that people couldn't hear it because they were spreading out far enough. And so the idea is we need a new bell for a bigger growing city. And the question was, well, what do you put on a bell? Because bells historically have had various quotes, dates. And so there was a committee of two that people believe were made up of Isaac Norris and Benjamin Franklin. And they said, let's order a bell from Whitechapel Foundry in London, a much bigger bell than what they had, and it would say, by the order of the Provincial Council of Pennsylvania, and they would put on it Leviticus 25, verse 10. A Bible verse that says, proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants thereof. And they literally wanted the verse put on it. It would say then, Whitechapel Foundry, 1751, and it would say London. Now you might say, why did they choose that Bible verse? Well, it was the 50th anniversary of Penn's Charter of Privileges. 1701, 1751. If you know your Bible, 50 years is called the Jubilee.
That's the Jubilee year.
And what chapter of the Bible does it come from? Leviticus
25.
Of
all things.
And it just so happens that it celebrates liberty. The Jubilee is a time where there was freedom that was granted. Well, being Bible students and knowing that this was a city of freedom, celebrating 50 years of Penn's Charter of Privileges that gave religious liberty, they said, let's order it. So it was ordered. It crossed 3,000 miles. It came to Philadelphia. They set it up for the very first time, right, someplace in the city, and they rang it, and it broke.
Oh, not success. Oh, no.
Can you imagine? What do you do with a bell 3,000 miles from home that's broken on the first ring? Do you send it back? That's too expensive. So two young mechanics by the name of Pass and Stowe said, we'll fix it. There'd never been a bell this size made in America. They broke it down, melted it down. They figured out how to shape it. They poured it. They set it up. They put on it the same words, except they put the Bible verse on top. Leviticus 25, verse 10, proclaim liberty throughout the land by the order of the Provincial Council. And they put their names on it, Pass and Stowe. They
and
put
no
on
London?
Not London,
oh, okay.
Philadelphia. And they put on there then a new date, 1752, I think it would be. So they rang it, and people said, it's
success.
No,
oh.
it's terrible. It
oh,
sounds
no.
like a clunking thud. It's no
not good.
They got the harmonics wrong. So they melded it down a third time. Can you imagine this? This bell has been made three times, and the Bible verse was put back on every time.
All three times.
But now promoted to the top. And this time, when they rang it, it sounded pretty good.
Third time a charm.
Third time's a charm, and that's where it went.
And it
went up to the bell tower. And that became then the official bell of the city. It was there 50 years celebrating religious liberty, but it just so happens a major event came along on July 8th, 1776. 4 days after the public release of the Declaration of Independence, they read it publicly, and they rang the bell to celebrate it. So the bell now celebrates not only religious liberty, but now political liberty. When that bell rang out, Philadelphia was the second largest English-speaking city in the world after London. Penn's
and the largest city in America.
Yep, it was the central place, and so here's where they gathered. Well, that worked pretty well, but the problem came about on the first 9/11 in American history. That's the Battle of Brandywine. Washington lost. The British come in to take the city, and what they did is they said, we need to take down every bell, every statue made out of metal, and get it out of the city. Why? Because it'll be melted down into musket balls and cannonballs.
And the British would use it.
And the British would use it. So the Liberty Bell was taken out of the city and moved all the way to Allentown, Pennsylvania. And it spent a winter in the basement of the old Zion Reformed Church in Allentown.
interesting.
I like to say our Liberty Bell has some Reformed theology in it. So for us
At
Presbyterians,
least from
we'd be
the
happy
basement
about that.
level.
That's right. Introductory foundational level. Well, it was brought back. According to tradition, it fell a time or two on the way, which probably didn't help it. And it was eventually put back in place and used. And so for the announcing of the death of the third Supreme Court Chief Justice, that's John Marshall. He's famous for the Danbury v. Madison case that established judicial review. That was the ability to say that law is not constitutional. Jefferson was fuming when they claimed that right. No one could stop them. It's been used ever since by the court. But Marshall died and they were ringing out, tolling his death, and the bell cracked.
So the story that we often hear that it cracked on the 4th of July, but actually was that they rang the bell on the 8th, but it didn't crack then. It was at the time of Marshall's death. This is when
that's when it cracked. But it cracked on the very first day when it showed up. So this is the second time it cracked. So what they did then is they decided to drill out the crack, and that's why it's so wide when you can see the crack. And then they mended it with some plugs. So it, instead of
so you can see there those two plugs right on the crack.
Right. So that was a way to say we mended the bell, and they kept using it. And now there was a few years past, and they were celebrating Washington's birthday. Washington now had become an important part of our history, and it cracked again.
Oh no.
Third time it cracked. The third time is the charm, right? 3 strikes you're out, right? So they looked at the crack and they realized that from the drilled out crack, the crack kept on going and it goes right through the word liberty. And so the bell was done. There's no way, if they ring it anymore, it would vibrate poorly and it would finally be
fall
destroyed.
apart. Yep.
So the bell was set aside. And now you have a question, what do you do with an old broken bell? Does it get just shoved in a corner? Does it get thrown out? But another group of people came along by the name of the abolitionists. They said, wait, that old bell says proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants.
Were they the ones that first took it on the road?
They took it on the road for the first time, and they gave it the name Liberty Bell.
So that's how it was coined.
That's how it was coined. And so that symbol then becomes, if you will, the freedom of the slave, ending of slavery. And the Liberty Bell then becomes this famous icon that travels the country, that was symbolically rung on D-Day, that was rung for the first transatlantic phone call across the country. You know, just kind of a thud. But I love to say that bell, with all of its history, doesn't ring anymore. We have to ring it out by what we teach, like right now.
Right.
And we need to preserve liberty. It's suspended over a crack. We need to protect it, like we're doing right now. This is what our task is. But isn't it amazing, and the providence of it? That bell represents 4 different types of liberty, and no one would ever have known it when Franklin and Isaac Norris selected the name. Why? Biblical liberty, Leviticus 25. William Penn's religious liberty, the 50th anniversary, a Jubilee year. Political liberty, July 4th/8th, 1776. And then personal civil liberty, freedom from enslavement. That bell is the second most well-known symbol of America after the flag. The Liberty Bell is America. It's in the city of Philadelphia. And I humbly submit that that bell had a story that God intended to tell through the ages, and it's still relevant for us.
And it is very symbolic that the crack does in fact go through the word liberty, reminding us of how fragile our liberty is if we don't protect it.
So what are you going to do about it, Dr. Grant?
Well, this is one of the things we're doing about it, is that we are trying to get this portion of America's story told. So thank you so much for joining us in this session, and be sure to join us for our next. God bless you. Shalom.